like you have some life in you.
Oh, yes.
Now you don't sound like a corpse. You were sitting there going, yeah, I want to move out of my house.
No, we're not keeping that. We're not.
That's what a cold open is. We're just going to delete most of this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. It's been probably... When's the last time we uploaded anything? Late November?
No, I'm going to say it was sometime...
Late September?
Early October, if we're feeling generous, I would say.
Maybe I uploaded something in early October when I was drunk, and then I deleted it out of shame. Yeah, I think that happened. Sorry, everybody. We're back in business. It took a while, because we have shit that we had to do, and nobody really wants to be active during the holidays with a horror podcast anyway, because nobody gives a fuck. So, we're here talking about Nightmare on Elm Street 6. Right? Isn't that what this is? Are we... Oh
yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 6. We're finishing our Nightmare on Elm Street series, which is a little awkward because it was like we finished almost the entire thing and there was a whole big gap. But I'm the kind of person where if I start something, I am just dead set on finishing it, even if it's like a whole year later. But thankfully for you guys, we're not going to make you wait that long.
No, that shouldn't happen again. We won't have, the pilot upload schedule that we did have, where we were kind of uploading things 2 times a week. That's not going to happen again.
We're just a little bit too busy for that, unfortunately.
We're just going to take it by ear and at least try to consistently upload things once or twice a month, because... we wanted to get our voice out there. We wanted people to notice us. And we have a couple dozen people that consistently listen to us and ask for us back, which is a lot more than I thought we were going to have. Already especially. So, thank you. And
people on Instagram have been very nice. I'm shocked by the amount of followers that we're getting on our account, like, even after months of inactivity.
Twitter's fucking dead, though. Twitter ain't got shit. We have both! I run the Twitter, Carling runs the Instagram. It looks like most of you get exposed to Carling's bright, sunny personality and a lot less of, me, which is fine,
I think calling me Sunny is a little bit generous.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I'll just insult you next time.
Please,
alright.
do it.
No! Okay, Freddy, you take your fucking masochistic streak and shove it up your ass. Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that was better.
Oh, no, it was not. I just kind of, I did, Jackie Earle Haley's Rorschach for a second.
Maybe we'll do a Watchmen episode at some point. We both have a lot to say about that.
Oi. Oi. I'm all giggly because I'm happy to be back. You're gonna get a lot of ums and giggles and ahs because I'm gonna be real fucking honest. I do not have the time or energy to go through every other word. And, that's my dog scratching at the door.
Which one?
You know the one.
Oh,
you know the one. The one.
God.
I have an evil little French bulldog. You guys are getting me raw and unfiltered. You're getting Carling raw and somewhat filtered because Carling does not have the lack of shame that I have. Yet. We're working on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyway, right. We came here to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 6. So, do you want to start that, or do we want to fuck around a little bit more and tell people what's going on?
You mean just, like, what we're interested in, what we're doing in general?
I don't care. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Fuck
I'm
it.
done. I'm done bullshitting.
Alright. I'm playing it a little bit fast and loose. We are kind of restructuring our podcast a little bit. We're thinking right now, some episodes are going to be a little more scripted, like this one when we want to get analytical, and then we're going to have some goofier ones where we're going to look at things that interest us. Some of them are going to be horror related, others might be more horror adjacent or whatever. And we're just going to kind of say whatever pops into our heads.
Oh, God. Sorry.
like Grundle's lovely burp there. This is a little... I think we're going to stick to the script of this one a little bit more because we busted our asses on it.
We did.
But, yeah, in the future...
We busted our asses on it 4 months ago.
4 months ago. While I was trying to juggle schoolwork and a podcast, and that was very tough for me.
Yeah, and I was sitting around jerking off, and now I have a job, so, we swapped places for a second.
Yeah, we did. Other than that, I think that's pretty much everything. We're just happy to be here and happy to be back, and I am happy that I finally know how to talk in a podcast, because the first couple episodes, I sounded like a corpse.
You did sound like a corpse, but it's okay. It's kind of the theme of the whole thing. You're the corpse, and I'm the meat. Anyway, Yummy. I'm not cooked either. So, we had a friend here, not recently. The notes say recently. I wanted to make a note of that when we were going to make the podcast in September. That didn't happen. So, we had a couple friends, Hayden and Chip, who were gracious enough a while back to share their insight on Nightmare 6 and Freddy Krueger in general with us. And this sparked a lot of very intuitive conversation amongst Carling and myself. So when we were curating this episode, we eventually settled on, Freddy's Dead, this episode, being not only like the cap to the canon movies of the series, but to our analysis of Freddy's character in general as he has been known in them. We will be touching on, Freddy vs. Jason and things like the spin-off comic series at some point, but this is the end of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise as it is, accepted in canon. And, obviously I say a lot.
I do it too.
You don't know
because it's a northern thing.
Yeah, you don't know because I haven't fucking said it yet. Anyway, we are going to be touching on Freddy vs. Jason and Wes Craven's New Nightmare because that movie fucks. But love that movie. This is Freddy Krueger as evil dream dimension hopping, not quite demon yet thing. This is the end of that. And I think that this movie holds a lot of significance for being the end of that. Because it really did introduce a lot of weird new rules and lore to the franchise, and then it was just like, well, it's over, so you're gonna have to deal with it.
Oh man, I feel like I should have rewatched that before this episode, but I think I've seen this movie enough times to know what I'm talking about, and I think I'm familiar enough with Mr. Krueger to know what I'm talking about.
You can just say you think Maggie's hot, it's okay.
Yeah, she is a very beautiful woman, I'm gonna be honest.
Okay. But yeah, this is a very much a Freddy Krueger episode, and to some extent a Catherine Krueger episode. And we won't be talking your ear off about the actual movie, Nightmare 6, because anybody can give you a plot synopsis.
It's also a mess.
Oh, it's a fucking total mess. It's a disaster. Google and YouTube comments and other YouTubers, they can give you a review if you really want one. And if you want one, you're welcome to listen to one. But
yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I think Mike and Jay have talked about it, so I'm going to plug them on We Watched a Movie.
Our boys at Wham did, in fact, cover, I think, the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Yeah.
They did their own commentaries, they did reviews, if I'm not mistaken, so...
And they did it fucking funny, too. A lot funnier than this, so go watch them instead. We're not here to tell you whether or not any of these movies are, good or worth watching like other people are. We're just here to talk about what we learned from them and what we garnered. So, we're talking about what it means to us, how it applies to our lives, given who and what we are, hence this name LGBTerror, upon which you have stumbled into our 5th episode, and to which you will hopefully enjoy. So, welcome back, I'm Grendel, that's Carling, and today we're discussing the themes of abusive cycles and sexual repression and mental illness, and most of all Freddy, because Freddy's dead, and this is his wake.
I am reading the notes and holy crap, you covered a lot of what I was going to say, about how, this is more about Freddy than about the movie itself. So I'm just going to jump right into the meat of it. We are not in 1984 anymore. We are now in 1991. So this is the beginning of the 90s, and Freddy's popularity is finally on the decline. So New Line is losing money on him. And if you remember, the last movie we talked about was... oh god, I'm umming, I'm so sorry. The last we talked about the Dream Child.
Nobody cares if we or they're probably just happy that we're back,
Yeah, that's true. We did Dream Child. Oh my god, you don't spend a minute because I'm struggling to remember what the 4th one was called. Dream Master and Dream Child. We were not a fan of either of those. But, critics hated Dream Child. So the executives at New Line thought, rather than revamping the series, they were just going to kill it, and they were going to kill Freddy. According to...
That's just such a fucked up thing. Go on. That's what Springwood did. Go on.
You are no longer a cash cow
anymore. You die
now. So according to the director and the writer, and I'm so sorry if I butcher her name, my notes say Rachel Talalay.
That can't be right.
That can't be right.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, very, very sorry. That isn't her name. I will look it up and you'll see who... Rachel. Let's just call her Rachel. She wanted to move away from the special effects spectacle that were 4 and 5, and she wanted to do a character-driven piece. So I'm wondering, like, I don't know. The studio probably butchered her vision. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt here. Happens all the time. It's happened to many of my favorite movies. In an interview with Fangoria, she said that this film was an attempt at an honest attempt at a final closure rather than simply letting Freddy die. You tried, Rachel. You tried.
Excuse me, it's Raquel.
Oh, is it?
No.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I'm assuming that's not correct.
Yeah, we're doing our best. She did our best. We're doing our best. Some people, I mean, maybe there are a couple people who try to argue that this film isn't as bad as people make it out to be. And to be fair, I have seen way worse films than this one. This one is at least entertaining.
Oh yeah, I can go back and watch Freddy's Dead. I can't fucking go back and watch Dream Child. I can't do it, I'm sorry. That's why we didn't cover Dream Child.
We covered it, but we didn't go into details about the plot because there really wasn't a lot to say about that. I have to say, I personally have a really hard time watching 4, but we're not going to rant about that. If you want to hear us complain about parts 4 and 5, we have an episode for that.
Yeah, it's the one right before this one.
Yeah. I will say, what's really interesting to me about this film is that it is the only appearance of Maggie Burroughs / Catherine Kruger. She has a ton of fan work about her, tons of fan art, tons of fan fiction. And, you know, you'd think she was in more of these films, but she wasn't. She was just in the one, and it kind of sucks because I think she deserved a better movie. But I think it says a lot that the movie itself was not great, and people still to this day talk about this character, and some people want her to come back. I have to say I'm one of them. I feel like they could have done a lot more with her.
Oh, I loved her. And the fucking Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comics did her so goddamn fucking dirty that I don't even want to talk about it. How do you give us a character that becomes so beloved to us and then you fuck it up that bad, man? Why did you do that?
I am a very we're horror fans. And I was like gagging when I found out what they did to her.
There's a difference between horror and just gratuitous, taboo, disgusting bullshit for the sake of shock factor, and I do not enjoy gratuitous bullshit for the sake of shock factor. It's why I don't watch a lot of like grindhouse horror movies despite liking some of them.
Yeah, between the two of us, I'm more of the exploitation fan, and even I'm kind of picky about those sometimes.
I'm a fucking pussy. For a guy who runs a horror podcast with my co-host here, I really am a fucking pussy about horror.
No, there are certain... This is a whole other episode. There are certain movies that people love, and the two of us are just like, we can't do it. We are not Saw fans here, but no. That's a whole other thing.
You're not gonna see us covering Saw. We might mention that really homoerotic scene where they cut each other's legs off or whatever happens.
I did like the first one, but not enough to cover it, I think.
No, I would not watch those movies just to cover them. Terrifier actually wasn't as bad to me as Saw was, because at least that looked like corn syrup.
Yeah, and we're also big fans of Damien Leone and David Howard Thornton.
David.
So we will be. We love you.
David, come on the podcast. David, come on the podcast, man.
Please.
I'm gonna have to refrain from saying what I think about David Howard Thornton. Nothing bad. Actually, quite the opposite. Because if I want him on this podcast, I don't think he needs to know how I view him.
You have said too much already.
I have, and I'm sorry. I doubt DHT is gonna come over here and listen to this, but in case you are, dude, I apologize in advance. But not enough to stop. So, anyway. We objectify men here, sir.
Yes.
But yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I rudely interrupted you?
Oh no, I don't think it was rude. The last thing I wanted to say is that this movie is kind of destroys whatever shred of mystique that Freddy has, and he's kind of become an open book. And I'm looking at our notes, and that was the last part that we wrote for me in the section, so that it is now your turn, my friend.
It's basically like we're reading somebody else's writing at this point. Mm-hmm. It feels very strange, because you guys have no idea how old this shit is. I came back to this, and I'm like, I don't remember what we were talking about.
I feel like we returned from a war, just the way this year went.
We did. We fucking did.
Last year. Thank God I can say that now.
I got a tooth knocked out and shit since we last recorded.
Oh my God, yeah,
shit
that
sucks.
Was horrible.
It was awesome. I saw my nerve, it was cool. Anyway.
Yeah, he sent me a picture.
Yeah, it was little and pink and
fleshy.
Yeah.
Fleshy.
Looked like a little fruit. I wanted to eat it. Anyway, a particularly interesting thing to all of us during our discussion was the idea that we presented in the last episode, which is that Freddy Krueger is caught in a vicious cycle, one he does not know how to break, and he was never given the opportunity to be free of this. With the exception of spending time with his daughter, we never really see Freddy as a happy person. We see a lot of Freddy's life, and a lot of Freddy's life reads to me as this continued cyclical path, this very redundant and inescapable sense of damnation. This is the movie that made me pity him the most, and again, whether you like the movie is irrelevant and subjective, because this is the movie that rendered him obsolete. I know that this movie is goofy, and I know that its writing is often bad, as the latter half of the canonical Nightmare on Elm Street franchise's writing just is. And I know it reduces his character to something very two-dimensional unless you squint really hard at what the narrative is. Yeah, we do. That's what we do here. At what the narrative is trying to present to us, but this movie was right. It killed Freddy Krueger. Freddy's dead. And Chip, one of our friends in, the discussion that I mentioned, said to me, Freddy is conservative not politically, but with his body, because even in flashbacks, Freddy is wearing layers or long sleeves or both, even before he got burnt. And what we gathered here, alongside, possible implications of gender dysphoria, if you choose to interpret it as such, is Freddy rejecting any sense of vulnerability, specifically physical vulnerability, physical openness. However, the movie completely subverts that. The movie shows him at his most human and at his most vulnerable. And corrupts it, too. In a way, we see this as how he loves his daughter, and it's that he doesn't know how to love her. He thinks that to love something is to use it. He was never taught how to love anything because nothing ever loved him the right way, if that makes any sense. He doesn't know any better. And if anybody ever tried for Freddy, if anybody ever tried to love Freddy, it was when he was too young to remember, and we know why he stuffs anything positive down too. We saw how Underwood, in this movie, treated him. To Freddy, being soft is being weak. He cannot accept this about himself because he has constructed his entire identity off of the fear and disturbance of others. He forces himself into a continued role of sadomasochism and poor behavior and just this refusal, this staunch refusal to be a better man. Oh, vomiting. And yet, wow. that was a wet one. And yet, interestingly enough, in Freddy's Dead, we do see this one fleeting glimpse of happiness with him. He didn't know how to navigate this either. Not in any way that didn't make him appear criminal, but he adored his child. And I won't get into Loretta because I think that her character was handled very poorly, and there isn't much to say besides the fact that she was a much stronger woman in the original script. However, Freddy is, quote-unquote, happy in his suburban heterosexual family facade until Loretta finds him out, which out of context is a statement that holds some super interesting implications. If you look at it metaphorically, here's, how I laid this out in my head. Freddy has a wife and child. He is clearly more connected to the child in a genuine emotional sense than he is to his wife. His wife ventures into a very private part of Freddy's life, somewhere he never allows anyone else to go, and she's upset and she's horrified and she feels betrayed by what she finds there. She assumes violence and she assumes sexual deviance of him because of it. Are you getting where I'm coming from? His basement is his closet. Anyway, thus, Freddy tantrums, and Freddy ruins whatever semblance of normalcy he finally had. He loses his wife, he loses the trust of his daughter, all because of this thing that he tried to keep secret from them, and ultimately, due to who he was and what he could not control about himself, he couldn't. If that sounds like it stands for anything, that's because it might.
Oh, yeah. And I have to say, I really don't like the way this movie handled Loretta Krueger, but I still find myself fascinated by her. Like, why did she decide to marry Freddy of all people? Like, what does that say about her?
His tight little ass.
Oh my god. Of course that's what you're gonna think, gay man.
I was getting a drink. Go on.
I kind of drink.
What the fuck do you think I drink on the podcast? Go on.
Coffee.
Sure.
I have seen some pretty gruesome and fucked up interpretations of this relationship over the years. I think I mentioned in the first episode I've been a horror fan. Yeah, we're not gonna get into that. That's a whole other thing. But I have been a Nightmare on Elm Street fan for a long time. I've been a horror fan for a long time. And I'm the kind of person who likes to be part of online communities. So I have seen some shit in my life. And anyway, I think you guys.
We don't want to get into that.
I do want to approach the subject realistically, though, the relationship. Whether you want to believe that Freddy genuinely loved Loretta or not, let's be honest with ourselves. We might love Freddy, but he is a very misogynistic person.
Oh, he sucks.
Oh,
he fucking
horrible.
Sucks. Whatever you interpret him as, he fucking sucks. It doesn't matter.
Beyond his misogyny, this man does not seem capable of treating people as anything other than tools to use at his disposal. It's like Grendel said, he doesn't know how to treat anybody because nobody ever taught him. Even if we were to assume that this is a trait that only spiraled out of control after his death, it couldn't have come out of nowhere. Because you gotta think about what he's like. You have this extremely traumatized, assumedly repressed man who likes other men. He's probably not cis, and he marries a woman despite having resentment towards women. And that screams cover marriage to me.
Beard!
Yep. Whether you want to interpret Freddy as a bi man with a male preference or a repressed gay man, which some people do, I don't think marrying Loretta is something he chose out of anything other than necessity. Flashbacks in this movie depict him as a social outcast, and for all of his stupid decisions, Freddy's a pretty observant guy. He takes one look at the white picket fence life that his peers have latched onto, and he realizes that if he plays pretend, all of the other reindeer will lay off the Rudolph games. I think I've used that piece of dialogue in some writing. Anyway,
I think you absolutely have. We write fan fiction, sorry. Sorry to know that about us.
We're gonna be, just full disclosure, we're total nerds. Yeah, but
Speak
whatever.
for yourself, I'm sexy and awesome.
I'm a sexy nerd. We can see we're a lot more comfortable doing this now than we were at the start. Back to Freddy and Loretta, I'm thinking that she probably approached him first. Maybe he approached her, I don't know. But whatever the case is, being forced into this heteronormative role of husband and father didn't do Freddy any favors. It didn't do favors for his mental health, which was already in the toilet. I think that he was a volatile spouse. I think that he projected his resentment of his situation onto Loretta, despite the fact that he was probably the one who suggested the marriage in the first place, and that he went behind her back a lot because he saw that as punishing her, as well as seeking out personal satisfaction. He's a vindictive person. He isn't rational. And whether or not his resentment was conscious or subconscious is subject for debate. Whatever the case is, Loretta deserved a lot better, and I could kick Freddy's ass for the way he treated her.
You brought up very interesting points in the conversation, in that Freddy prides himself on being a manipulator. And at the same time, he's really bad at it. Or at least he's really, really bad at concealing the emotional anguish of his own that leads him into that behavior. Because manipulation comes from somewhere, and I do believe that a lot of, Freddy's, despite what the lore will tell you, I think from observation, from what I know about psychology, that a lot of what's wrong with Freddy is nurture and not nature. I don't think there are many, if any, people that are born inherently evil and fucked up and sadistic. I'm sure there are some in history, but I mostly believe that the shit that happened to him is what made him like this. He wasn't born a demon or whatever. I think that's just fucking stupid, and I think that takes a lot away from him as a character.
Lazy writing.
Yeah, I don't like that. Even as a metaphor, I don't like the idea that people are just born bad. But yeah, he's super bad at, hiding a lot of that. Maybe keeping even just physically all of the evidence in your basement connected to your house isn't like the best idea, but whatever.
Controversial opinion? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Interrupt you.
You're kind.
Okay. Cool. Controversial opinion. Freddy Krueger is not as smart as his fans like to say that he is.
No,
I love this character.
That's why I like him, is because he's a fucking dumbass.
Yes.
Realistically, that's exactly what would happen, is that he would get caught in 5 minutes because he fucking sucks at this shit. He's too theatrical and full of himself to properly hide anything.
Yes, and I think I think one of the reasons I actually liked the way that he was characterized in Freddy vs. Jason is because they acknowledge he is a good manipulator, but shit tends to blow up in his face fast and often. And that movie really leaned into that.
I really wish we would have gotten... There's a treatment we might discuss at some point for what would have been the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash movie, and I really wish we would have gotten the Ozymandias from Watchmen reference with him, where he lays out his whole big evil plan, and he's like, I did it 10 minutes ago. Like, I wish to God we would have had that. I think that would have been a really... As funny as it would have been, it would have been a really interesting character point, too, because he does
character development.
Yeah, he does kind of do that. He's just like, I'm gonna spill everything because I think it makes me look cool, and that's usually what gets him fucked over, which is what happens in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nightmare 6 makes him especially transparent about this, often in this very rubber hose, cartoon, comedic sort of way. A lot of this is, like, slapstick more than violence. You said that he was explosive and reactive, and that this made you think of the scene where he splits on Loretta as a metaphor for her uncovering part of his identity that he didn't want her to know about. And I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on how and why Freddy still manages to wear his heart on his sleeve despite all that's happened to him. Do you think he even realizes he's doing it, or does he think that he's really fucking slick? Like, is he doing this on purpose? His whole revealing his shtick thing? Is this part of his character consciously, or is he just really that bad at it?
I've really missed talking about Freddy. It's been a minute since we talked about him on or off the mic. Here's the thing. As capable as Freddy is of analyzing other people and picking them apart, he lacks the ability to self-reflect. Self-reflection requires a great degree of emotional vulnerability and admitting when you're wrong about something, and Freddy is not capable of that. He's almost delusional in that sense. He's so committed to these personas that he adopts, particularly his monstrous persona, that he refuses to acknowledge anything beyond his own wrath and anger. He thinks that these are the only feelings he's allowed to have because they are what benefits him by making him seem ferocious. He doesn't feel this way about sadness or fear or anything like that. Those are emotions that Freddy views as weak, and we know that he'd sooner die than be perceived as a weak man.
Well, boy, does he get his fucking wish. You fucking idiot. This man gets killed like every other movie.
I think I can't get over this. I'm sorry. I really think there are some Freddy fans who are just, I can see why you like him because you act like him. You think he's cooler than he is. Like, when you see that I don't.
He's not cool. It's the same thing with fucking...
He's fun.
Yeah,
he's not cool.
It's kind of the same thing, but minus the fun part, as... We should talk about Watchmen because I have a lot to say about it, but it's the same thing as Rorschach. It's like, you construct this violent, vile, shitty man who is a satire of toxic masculinity and, like, repression and shit. And then certain people... Certain people... my vomit! I taste it in my mouth. Certain people will look at that and they'll be like, oh my god, he's so cool. I want to be just like him. And it's like, you don't. That's not the point. What? That's not the fucking point. What are you doing?
We've been watching a lot of Casper. You can hear him slipping into his Stretch McFadden voice a little bit.
What's up,
sometimes.
faggot?
Oh my god.
So-
We'll talk about that another day. We've been getting real kick out of that old little cartoon.
And by another day, I mean this is probably going to be the next thing we upload. It's just us fucking around talking about that movie.
Yes, and that fun little cartoon that not many people know about.
Ooh,
I do want to say really quick before you move on, because we're the kind of people when we're really excited about it, it kind of seeps into everything that we do. Gotta love being neurodivergent.
Autism.
And I have ADHD. Hey, how do I describe it? The reason that we've mentioned Terrifier a little bit in Art the Clown, and the reason I like that character so much is because the movie Terrifier never tries to paint Art as cool. They take this scummy character that he is, and he does share a lot of similarities to Freddy. David, the actor who plays him, admitted it. They never try to pass Art off as cool. They take this person, this totally fucked up man, and they're like, you don't want to be like him. There is something deeply wrong with him. He's an idiot.
He's a douche.
And they fully acknowledge, with Damien and especially David acknowledge, like, Art's kind of a dumbass. Art fucks up, and the movie totally leans into that, and I love it, and I think that's why it works. And as much as I love Nightmare on Elm Street, I think the series, and and Freddy vs. Jason did this, and this is why I like that movie so much. I think the Nightmare series should have played into Freddy not being as cool as he says he is a little bit more.
Yeah, because it'll do like a Looney Tunes style thing with him a lot in the canon franchise, but that's not really enough to depict him as incompetent, because even when he's doing Looney Tunes style shit, he usually still gets his way. Which is fine a lot of the time, but when that's the only thing that happens, and he never really becomes his own foil, or at least not definitively in the narrative, like it's not made a point in the narrative, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess that happened, then it almost paints him as, I don't want to say suave, but that's the word that comes to mind. It paints him as capable, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, you need to remind the audience that serial murder is bad, because you really should not have to when you're creating a piece of media. I think that if you need to be reminded that something is bad, you're kind of a dick.
You probably shouldn't even be watching it.
Yeah, maybe you got some issues. I do think, you do have to be careful, and this was the 80s and 90s, so I don't expect careful, but you do have to be a little conscious, at least this day and age, of not depicting serial killers as cool or,
suave.
Don't depict them as somebody you should look up to. I don't like that. They can be funny and likable, but I don't know. There's a fine line. Hayden, our other good friend, said that his theory was that Freddy was a passionate person, and for Freddy, this was often a very bad, self-destructive thing. He suggested that Freddy can only react with the most burning of emotions. And I have to ask you, because you're a resident Freddy expert, how do you think this translated into his treatment of Catherine, or Maggie, when she was a little girl? How differently did he treat Catherine from how he treats Maggie as a grown woman? Do you think that he resents her, or do you think he resents himself, or is it both?
Well, if we're going off the assumption that Freddy loved his child, which I also like to believe that he did, I think he was probably Catherine's favorite person, and for good reason. We saw the way that he praised her when she kicked his ass at the end, so that leads me to believe that he was probably a pretty encouraging dad when she was little. Probably too encouraging, to be honest, because he strikes me as the kind of parent who would have let her get away with murder, pun intended, if he could. It wouldn't have surprised me if that was another point of conflict in his relationship with Loretta. Relationship with Loretta. If we're going to dive into any of our fan theories at all, I think that Freddy spoiling Catherine and leaving all the discipline up to Loretta probably made Catherine resent her mom and cling to her dad.
Manipulative man.
Yep, and she's too little to understand what's going on. And the fact that Freddy tried to give Catherine a happy childhood at all is probably the most redeeming quality that he has. I have to wonder if his desire to shape his daughter into the next-gen version of himself was something he always planned to do, or if that's a desire that only arose after his death. Because it raises a lot of questions. For example, would he have been able to continue being a supportive parent, or would his trauma eventually cause him to turn on Catherine as she got older? Even if he remained somewhat stable, would his bad habits started rubbing off on her? I think that's kind of hard to say. Like, I want to hope for the best, but it's Freddy, and you can't really do that with him.
No, you can't, because he's kind of a fucking dipshit.
Nightmare.
In every sense of the word.
As for how he treats her when she's an adult, I feel like he can't really let go of the mental image he had of her when she was a child. Like, when she enters his dreamscape, she comes in with these pigtails and this little pink dress that she wore when she was a kid. He's infantilizing her, and I think that he's possessive of her. And I feel like that possessiveness of her is not something that started in adulthood. I think he was that way with her when she was a kid. I feel like that's probably because he saw her as the only good thing about his life and couldn't risk losing her, and because I think he was scared of what might happen to her if he let her out of his sight, which is, again, one of his few redeeming qualities. I do think there was genuine care there, even with all the manipulation. I don't think there was anything creepy or weird going on between them. I really don't.
No, it really just struck me as he didn't know how to behave around her.
No, this man doesn't know how to. If he doesn't know how to treat people, how is he going to know how to treat kids?
He didn't know how to treat small animals, and that's I do absolutely subscribe to the idea that Freddy is, or is at least predisposed to being a serial killer. I know that we've established we don't think he's a child molester. I don't think that should have ever been an accepted thing about his character, thanks remake. But a person who hurts small animals, especially when they're a child and they have that kind of anger in them that leads them to do something like that desire to control, they're not gonna know how to treat things that are smaller and weaker and dependent. They don't. They can't. They have a separation, a boundary of separation. I would know. I lived with a legitimate psychopath, and I mean that in the most clinical term. They have a distinct separation in their head where the boundary between keeping something safe and loving something and then controlling it and possessing it and wanting some degree of power over it, which sometimes turns violent, not always, but sometimes it does. That's a line that they kind of tiptoe on a lot, and it makes them scary. It's like walking on eggshells, but it's not really the person's fault. It's just that's what's going on in their head, and it's not something that they can control without medication and therapy and proper help, which Freddy did not have access to. So honestly, the fact that he treated Catherine as good as he did is nothing short of a miracle.
Honestly, yeah, and something I wanted to say earlier, and I just couldn't find an opening, is that Freddy, you can portray Freddy as kind of an incompetent character and a goofy and a flawed one while still making him scary. Like, these are things that make him scary. And that isn't me saying, oh my god, you should be scared of mentally ill people, because that would make me a hypocrite.
No, we're both mentally ill people. Don't do that.
Yeah, but I do feel like I think we've covered it pretty well already. Like, the fact that his lack of self-control is what makes him scary, and his lack of self-awareness is what makes him scary. And I don't think, and yes, it is mental illness, but those are also severe character flaws, and they're scary character flaws.
It's the lack of help, I think, that exacerbated an already existing issue. And then the active trauma and the lack of help for the trauma that exacerbated the issue that kind of turned Freddy into what he is. He's not the way that he is because he's mentally ill. He's the way that he is because he was left untreated and was actively hurt by his primary caretakers throughout his entire childhood, to the point where the only degree of authority he felt he had in his own life was to basically shut off any feeling and empathy that he had, which is the whole, I can't feel pain anymore. I taught myself how to not feel pain thing, in tandem with his harm of smaller things. Like, this is a kid who skins squirrels, and just to watch him die, fucked up, but he did it. It's just, I don't want to call that evil. I want to call that tragic, in a way.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Freddy does have narcissistic qualities too. I think I need to do more research on it. But if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people develop that as a defense mechanism.
Most personality disorders, yeah, they develop out of trauma or a defense mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like because of that narcissism that Freddy developed to protect himself, I think that it really eats at him that Maggie grew up without him. She grew up without him. I think it upsets him that he wasn't able to influence her the way that he wanted to. And I feel like he was probably a controlling family man, not necessarily because he held malice towards Loretta and Catherine, though as established earlier, he probably still wasn't great to Loretta. I think he was scared that if he didn't control them and if he didn't hold the reins all the time, they'd slip right out of his grasp. It's gross. It's a gross behavior, and I don't excuse it, but I do understand where it comes from. And by the end of the movie, I think that Freddy's feelings towards his daughter as an adult, I think they're complicated. I think that he's both furious that he couldn't get his hooks in her and relieved that she turned out to be a better person than he was. I think it says a lot about him that he had so many opportunities to kill her and chose not to numerous times. Because we have to consider, when has Freddy ever granted mercy towards anybody else ever in the series? When else has he ever shown mercy, period?
Not fucking much. When Freddy's story is examined through the lens, though, of a queer and mentally ill man, and his alleged crimes are viewed as allegories for much more innocent, though still taboo, socially frowned upon behaviors, because as we know, homosexuality and pedophilia were equated a lot of the time, especially back then, and just throughout history, and still now today, this happens. I do think that even the implication of that holds an extended, metaphor within it. I think that we can all agree that what Freddy stands for and what his legend claims him to be are two very different things. And that Freddy, viewed as someone on the fray of society for reasons beyond his control, is a Freddy with which we can almost sympathize, at least a lot more than the conceptual, canonical Freddy. Freddy Krueger is traumatized, And Freddy Krueger is, queer, and that combination, in our buddy Hayden's words, is not a combination that is kind to basic human development. On top of everything else he went through, that alone was, fucking bad enough. Not sexually, not psychologically, or socially, or emotionally. None of that was good for him. Sorry, I'm distracted. My dog is clawing at my door, and she's crying like a baby, and it's freaking me out. I can hear her. Yeah, it's freaking me the fuck out. He did not have a childhood. It's amazing to me that he even tried at all at this point to give his daughter a childhood, because he wasn't allowed to have one. And to some extent, that speaks to a shred of good in him. Princess, stop crying! You're making me sad!
She sounds like one of her puppies.
It's so sad! But that speaks to some shred of good in him. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not nearly enough to redeem him, but he didn't have a childhood, and he has to hide from everybody to cover up everything that he thinks and feels with these comic book villain-esque schemes and this almost fake personality. It makes him, oh my god, Princess, stop. It makes him much more unnerving to me than he would be if he were a silent, stoic killer, which is one of the many things that the Nightmare remake did horribly wrong, but we're not going to get into that.
My god in heaven, that dog loves you.
She really does. I can't be away from her for an hour. Sorry, everybody. Freddy is ultimately not emotionally mature. His emotions are unhealthy. His behaviors are not developed. He was not correct. Princess! 1 minute, honey! His behaviors were not developed. He was not correctly socialized, not as anything, not as a woman or a man, hardly as a person, and he was never allowed in any aspect to be a human being. Oh my god, she's trying to get in.
Oh my god.
Is it any wonder, then, that he so viciously devalues human life? Princess, please. It's like fucking Night of the Living Frenchie over here. Is it any wonder, though, that Freddy's angry? Oh shit. Oh shit.
This is we're trying to be dramatic.
This is like the most pivotal part of the script! Ah, shit! Okay. It's no wonder that, to me, that he lashes out like a child, or that he wants to live vicariously through youth when he is not destroying them. Dylan, Jacob, his own daughter, Jessie, these people that he wants to crawl inside of and hide there, to let them have to deal with him, and in that way ruin it. To take from them what he's never had.
We're so sorry.
I'm not.
It's really funny though, yeah.
Oh shit. She's trying to get me.
He has to live with this.
I have fucking 6 of these things. And that's not even all my dogs. That's just the bulldogs.
I'm sent pictures of them every day and you would not believe them.
Oh.
They're like cartoons.
They're not correct. He is a jealous, violently, just violently jealous.
Like princess. Oh, like princess, shit. You might say.
Like princess. And he's childish, but it comes as no surprise to me. Everything that he has done up to Freddy's Dead has been this long, extenuous temper tantrum. A way of unloving a world that...
Hold it together.
I think I better let her in. Hold on, everybody. You know what? You're gonna have to deal with my dog snorting.
Hello, princess.
Get in here, you mongrel.
You hear her little nails on the floor.
Hi, honey. I know I love you. I love you, baby.
You hear her?
I see you. If you pee on my floor, I'm gonna smack your little butt. Come here. Oh!
I've known this dog since she was a puppy.
Headphones are back on. What did I miss?
I was just talking about how I've known Princess for 2 years through you, and she is a very special animal.
Yeah, we'll have to put pictures of her up on Twitter and Instagram at some point.
Yeah, we're obligated at this point.
Now that everybody has been forced to be aware of her existence. She will make an appearance at some point in time. Anyway,
yes.
What was I'm just gonna reread that paragraph. How about that? And you're gonna have to put up with the little in the background when I do it.
I think it adds a layer.
Yeah, it does. It's ambiance.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Freddy is jealous. He's violently jealous, and he's childish. And it comes as no surprise to me because everything that he's done up to this point has basically been a big, long temper tantrum. And it is a way of unloving a world that never really loved him. And while there is not, and never will be, any way to justify the pain that he's caused so many others, innocent people who deserved better than the fate that he forced onto them, Freddy's dead. But, death was never an escape for him. Power wasn't an escape for him either. With the hands on his body and the belt at his back, it is not any wonder to me that he ended up that way. I don't wonder at all.
What really interests me is how the series shifted away from how Freddy's trauma is presented to us. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first film in the series to state outright that Freddy Krueger is an abuse survivor. Aside from a now non-canonical...
non-canonical.
Yes, a now non-canonical short story released around the same time that Dream Warriors came out, and the original draft of the Dream Child script, which was awesome, and I'd love to talk about that eventually. We never really got an indication of what Freddy's life was like before Freddy's dead, especially his home life. Rather than insisting that Freddy's evil comes from the nature of his conception. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I've read out loud.
No, for me, it's the snorting for me.
I'm trying so hard not to lose it right now. You have no idea. This This film suggests that it had a lot to do. I feel so bad. This is terrible.
It's great. It's great. No, perfect. I won't have to edit a thing.
It's just, this is such serious subject matter. I'm laughing at your dog. This film suggests that a lot had to do with his traumatic upbringing and untreated mental illness. Freddy even tries to use this as an excuse when Maggie confronts him at the end. He says, verbatim, that his lashing out was not his fault due to the abuse he suffered as a child. He tries to absolve himself of any guilt he may have in her eyes by, once again, projecting it onto others. And while there may be some truth to Freddy's words, he still shows a great deal of emotional immaturity by refusing to take responsibility for his actions. And that makes it difficult to sympathize with him for me.
Yeah, well, we can have different opinions. I want to suck his dick, but that doesn't matter.
Oh my god. I thought you were going to say I thought you were going to say something insightful, and I was like, really
I've been saying insightful shit this whole time.
I know, but like I thought we were going to enter like a little debate, and I'm like, this is interesting.
Right, yeah, I'm going to debate you. I'm going to debate you right now. I think he has a small penis.
You're going to debate me on that? Implying I would disagree with you? This is not a jab. This is not a jab at Robert Englund.
No, I'm sure Robert Englund's dick is huge.
But Freddy's?
No, yeah, he shaved off about 3 inches for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay. I think that ultimately Nightmare 6 is about reclamation. Here's your insight, if it makes you happy. Princess, stop digging in my underwear. As many Nightmare movies before and after it have been, Freddy Krueger as a character is and always has been a reclamation. He is...
Oh my god.
Oh shit.
You're living with Freddy Krueger.
The Beast. He is an angry child who turned into an angry man, who learned to base any sense of self-worth he had off of a purpose that he didn't get to form for himself. And I will say it, Freddy is pathetic. We said in episode 1, I'll say it again here, he is a sad, lonely, pathetic little man, and that's why he hurts things that are small and as helpless as he was when the world chewed him up and spat him out, right from birth. Springwood is an abandoned childhood home, with no children left to house it. The dreamscape is a child's overactive imagination. His cruelty has become a child's game that nobody else is having fun playing. If he likes you, he'll invite you onto his team. And he almost doesn't understand why people like Jesse and Maggie so adamantly reject that offer. It's like, why do you hate me? I'm giving you my power. This is all I have left, and I want you to have part of it, so why don't you want it? What did I do? He legitimately seems to be asking, what the hell did I do? Why don't you want to work with me? He doesn't know how to love anything. I cannot drive that point home enough. If he ever did know, he definitely did not know how to show it. And I think that if he were a better man, that would make me very sad for him. But instead I find myself saddened for people like Maggie and Nancy and Jesse and Kincaid and Carlos and anybody else he's sunk his teeth into and dragged into his cycle of abuse, especially if they survive to have to live with it. I want to be sad for Freddy in the way that you're sad for the kid who won't stop crying on the airplane because he's scared. It's obnoxious, and it gives you a fucking headache, but you know that he's having an even worse time than you are, and you just can't understand why his parents have elected to ignore him. But Freddy's not a baby. He's a grown fucking man. And because he's a grown fucking man, there's these intense, painful emotions that have given him far too much power to use them to hurt other people. This is a continued theme with him, and ultimately this is what Freddy's Dead taught me about Freddy Krueger as a character. There is then, just to wrap things up on my end, a great degree of significance in Maggie being the one to expertly wield her father's glove, and Freddy's death being at the hand of his own flesh and blood. In a way, it's almost like being killed by himself. Maggie Burroughs is not Catherine Krueger anymore, and Freddy Krueger is not her dad. She became her own person, she escaped out from under him, and when she finally put Freddy Krueger to rest, so with him went the Ouroboros. Maggie snuffed the cycle. She was stronger than her father, and I think that she got it from her mom.
I think so too, because no matter how you think Freddy ended up in a relationship with Loretta, no matter how you think that he might have treated her, you have to be tough as nails in order to survive coexistence with him for as long as she did. Like, I would say Catherine was, about 5, 6?
Yeah.
That's a long time to be with somebody, and who knows how long they were together before their child was born. And while the movie still did her dirty, I have to appreciate Maggie declaring justice for Loretta as she struck Freddy down. I'm glad Loretta wasn't totally written off, and I'm glad Maggie was allowed to grieve for her biological mother and honored her the only way that she could have in that moment. Wherever Loretta ended up after she died, I like to think that she's looking down on Maggie, and hopefully so is Amanda Krueger, Maggie's grandmother. Interestingly enough, in the original ending for Freddy's Dead, it was a lot less optimistic than, what we got in the movie. There were a lot more implications about just who the dream demons are and how they operate. We haven't talked about them a lot because this is more about Freddy and Maggie.
Floating sperms with faces.
Yeah, that's all you need to know right now. Though Maggie was able to put an end to Freddy's reign of terror and go on with her life, these demons went on to find a new victim. There was going to be this scene at the end where this little boy was being abused just as bad as little Freddy was, and he was basically tossed into a closet and he started hearing voices.
Oh, a closet.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Isn't that funny?
The cycle continues. And it may have ended with Freddy's cycle may have ended in this movie, but a whole new one was implied to start in the original script. And, I do appreciate the metaphor, but I have to say that I'm glad that they changed it, because as hokey as the whole Death by Dynamite thing was, I kind of prefer that the series ended on a more uplifting note, because these are fun movies, but they do have a lot of pain and suffering in them, and it wouldn't have made me feel very good to see that was going to start all over again with somebody else if they had gone that route.
Yeah, that shit sucks. That's a Zack Snyder film waiting to happen.
We really do need to talk about Watchmen.
We really do need to talk about why Zack Snyder can make things look pretty, but he shouldn't have any more creative direction beyond that. Anyway, that's all we've got today. Thank you for tuning in to the last canonical episode of our Nightmare on Elm Street segment. I have to take a big fucking frothy piss right now, so I have to end this. Next time we get together, we will talk about our non-canon Freddys, or at least in the near future, we will talk about this. New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, and until then, try not to think too hard about a fictional villain's childhood trauma, because that's our job and I don't want to be put out of business. Mm-hmm. We will see you again very soon. And stay cool. Or don't. I don't care. It's not my fucking job to watch you.
Bye-bye.